Hello and welcome to this morning's conference at the Jerusalem Press Club. My name is Talia Dekel. This Sunday evening, Israelis and Jews worldwide will mark the annual Memorial Day for fallen soldiers and victims of terror before the ever surreal transition to Independence Day celebrations. This year's events are especially daunting, occurring just over 7 months since the worst attack on Israeli soil since the country was founded. Joining JPC is a new member to the community of bereaved families, of which there are so many more this year. In fact, since October 7th, Israel has seen at least 1,421 fallen soldiers and murdered civilians, and this does not include dozens of foreigners killed during attacks. With us today is Debbie Ziering from Ra'anana in central Israel, whose eldest son, Captain Aryeh Zering, was killed in the defense of southern communities on the day of the Hamas onslaught. 27-year-old Arya served in the K-9 Special Forces Unit. First of all, Debbie, thank you so much for being with us. There are no words really that can comfort you, but we are grateful to hear Arya's story today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Maybe we can just start with, you telling us a little bit about him, who he was to you, to family, to friends.
Sure. So we immigrated to Israel in 1995, and Arya was born here. We lived in Jerusalem for 7 years, and then we moved to Ra'anana. I'm from Maine originally, and when we made Aliyah, my mother had passed away, so we spent many summers in Maine, and so he really, I think, got the best of both worlds in the beginning of his life. We loved the Boston Red Sox and Celtics and hiking in Maine, and it was really quite lovely. And he had a really nice childhood in Ra'anana. He was educated here, elementary and high school in Ra'anana, and then at the end of his senior year, as many Israeli kids do, Aryeh went to Poland on the Poland trip, and there I think he started to really sort of understand the importance of the state of Israel to the Jews, and beginning to understand his responsibility in taking his place in protecting it one day. Aryeh drafted to, he actually originally drafted to the Navy SEALs, the Shayetet Shalosh Esrei, and early on he decided that was not for him, and he went to Oketz, the K-9 unit. It's funny because he actually made his way back to the Shayetet unit as basically their dog handler. He was an excellent soldier. Now this is starting to be stuff that I know because people have told me. I always knew he was a wonderful person, but he was a very, very, very good soldier, a very professional, and it's not very usual that at the end of the service, he was almost ready to leave when they said to him, "We want you to be a commander." And he ended up going to officer school and graduating, and then basically took the training of all of the combat soldiers whose dogs who are attack dogs and dogs that search for explosives. I think he's had over 150 soldiers that he's trained and been the commander of. And when the time of October 7th, he was the commander of the attack dog team. And that was his background.
Can you tell us a little bit about his hobbies, things he enjoyed? He was also an older
brother. First of all, he loved sports, loved basketball. He was an avid basketball player. He played on teams in Ra'anana. He was very athletic, so he was very good at everything that he did. We have a very close family. He has 3 siblings. Recently I've been telling his story in elementary schools. I'm a tour guide, and I worked a lot with kids. And so I've been going around to 6th grade, and I say to them 2 things, because I think this is really important. Aryeh had like a lot of trouble in school when he was young. And he learned very early that everybody has whatever issues they have, but if you work hard, you could do anything. And I think that was something in his life, that whether it was sports or school or in the army or anything else, And the second thing, which when you talk about siblings, is my kids always made time for sort of trips together in Israel. They would take days off and they would hike together without my husband and I. And I said, if there's two things that you take from Aryeh, those are the things that you could do anything you want if you work hard, and then keep close with your siblings. He had wonderful friends. He was very beloved. Even when I speak to people now, that was the thing. He was a good person. He saw everybody, as we say in Hebrew, bagove naim. It didn't matter if it was the highest, sort of person of rank, or somebody who took out the garbage or anything else. He saw everybody and felt equal to everybody, and everyone talks about him that way. So
You mentioned that you heard things about him from friends during the Shiva. Is there a particular story that stands out that you remember that you'd like to share with us?
I remember at the beginning of the actually before even the funeral, because the funeral didn't happen right away. One of the girls who was actually, she worked with kids who had special needs on the base, and it sounds a little bit crazy, but one of the things they do on people's birthday is, obviously very carefully, these attack dogs, they bring them out and they sort of, the soldiers get all dressed up in their big uniform, puffy uniform, and the dogs go and they sort of attack, and it's sort of, they play this happy birthday song. And this one boy wanted so badly to do this, and everybody said to Ari, don't do it. Like, I'm not sure that he can handle it, I don't think. And she said to me, she sent me the videos, two videos. One, he was, dressing up in the suit, and also Arya did it himself, and saying to him, this is the dog, this is his name, and don't worry. And the boy was so excited, so excited. And then the next video is Arya actually holding the dog. He didn't really let him, but the boy just being thrilled that he was like everybody else. And at the shloshim, the 30 days, the ceremony that we had, he came over to me. He handed me a letter. He said, Arya was the best person he knew. He said he was my true friend. He used to sit with me in the cafeteria, and I'll never forget him. And he gave me this rock that he had painted, that I put on the grave. It was very sweet.
It's beautiful, and I can assume that you'll probably stay in touch with people afterwards.
We're in touch with everybody. They write to us all the time. They call us all the time. They're amazing, actually.
Debbie, if it's okay with you, could you tell us what you know about what happened that day?
Sure. So Aryeh was home for the holiday on the 7th. And the truth is, I went to synagogue quite early because it was Simchat Torah, and I didn't hear the siren in Ra'anana. But Aryeh started to get calls from his commanders, because there were soldiers that were on the border as regular sort of watching the borders. And they started to understand what was happening. And I think they were terrified, actually. So they called their commanders, who called Aryeh. And one of the commanders said that when he called Aryeh, Aryeh said, don't worry, I'm coming. And he picked up from the house and he ran to the base and he picked up all his equipment, and he picked up a soldier with a dog, and they just started heading south. And this wasn't organized with, sort of the units together. He just started going south. He called a friend from Ra'anana who is also a mempe in the paratroopers unit. They met in Sderot. His friend said to me that they saw motorcycles.
Platoon commander.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they saw motorcycles on the side of the road in Sderot, but they didn't know what had happened. They were sort of standing there trying to figure out the situation, and then they started getting reports. And then Aryeh went off towards Zikim Beach, and there is a base there called the Yiftach base. And there he met also a very high level, the Magad of the Tzanchanim. I don't know, he's in charge of Sayeret Tzanchanim. And it was Aryeh and his soldier, and he had another soldier. There were 4 of them only. And they started running into the base, and they ran into the Yiftach base, and they told me that what they saw, just there were bodies at the front gate, there were bodies inside. The terrorists had already been through. And then they started to receive reports that there were terrorists in the terrorists in the cafeteria. They ran there, but it seems like they had already gone. And then they got a report that there was an overturned tank outside of the base, and that there were terrorists outside of the base. And they ran out, and there they were met by another group from another unit called Maglan, and then three people from the tank unit who were just in the center of the country and decided that they can't not do anything. They came down. They didn't have a tank, nothing, but they joined this group, and they were just about to let the dog go to catch the terrorists when the terrorist opened fire with what he said were 5 machsaniot rounds. I'm not sure exactly, 5 rounds of ammunition, and he took down 5 people. Aryeh was one of them. Unfortunately, he was shot in his head. And so I think that I'm hoping that he didn't suffer, but there were no ambulances there. There was nothing. Now we hear there's helicopters. And so these 3 guys in their private car brought him to Barzilai Hospital. And I'm assuming that he died on the way. We don't even have that information. There's no intake from that day in the hospital, in the emergency room. And as I was looking for more information, I was talking to the head of the Sayeret Tzanchanim. I said, I just want to know what did you talk about? What did you see? What did you know? And he said, we didn't talk. He said, it was very, very technical. We were doing exactly what we needed to do to go from place to place safely. And he said, as Oketz does, they go first. And what we've seen in the war is we've seen all the soldiers that the dogs have saved now in Gaza. But he kept saying to me, he said, your son went first. He kept telling me, you stay behind me. We are going first. He knew what he was doing. He was very, very professional. And I said to him, did you know about the Nova? Did you know about the kibbutzim? What did you know? And he said, we didn't know anything then. We knew that there had been an invasion of terrorists. We didn't know how many. It was the very, very early hours of the 7th.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Debbie. You said his friend took his dog. Did Arya have a dog with him as well?
No, so Arya, as a commander, didn't have a dog. Okay. Actually, I wanted to you made me think of something, because I've been reading this book. It's in Hebrew now, but it's going to be, it's being translated right now. It's called One Day in October, 40 stories of heroism on the 7th. And I can't put it down, because it is soldiers and civilians and children and people that just ran down to the Gaza envelope on the 7th, and without fear, or maybe with fear, but they did it anyway. And I think that, it's funny, because Aryeh's story isn't one that has a lot of details, a lot of shooting, he really was killed very early on. I always think to myself, how disappointed he would have been, because he probably wanted to have done so much more. But it's about Arya and about all these other people. It's the values that drove them down to say, we have to do this. We have to repel this attack. And it's incredibly inspirational, these stories, every one of them. So when it comes out in English, everybody should read it.
These are, of course, values that he got at home. He got, I'm sure, from his surroundings, and connect obviously to the reason why you decided to immigrate to Israel in the first place. So many years later, is there anything that you think about as an Ola, as someone who decided to be here versus other families who are here because not necessarily because they have to be, but are naturalized Israelis? Is that something you think about, especially since Arya has fallen?
So when we came to Israel, I told you before it started, it was a month before Rabin was assassinated. We did not speak Hebrew. We did not really understand the politics at the time. It was a very hard time to be in Israel. And everybody would look to us and say, what are you, crazy? What are you doing here? Go back home, but go back home. but we stayed. And then I got pregnant with Aryeh. And then I realized that Israel loves children and families. And just every year, I fell in love more and more and more with the country. And as my children grew, and I saw the strong Jewish identity that they had, that was such an integral part of them, that wasn't something you thought about because that's who you are. That pushed them also to do things that were meaningful in their life. And all of them have done, meaningful things in the army. And I have two children that are going to be moving to the OTEF in the summer. And so I don't have any regrets about that. And I don't think that they never, and they had times that we visited family in America, but they never said, oh, we want to be there. It was always the place of vacation and to visit family. And I think about this because when I was with these sixth graders the other day, they asked me, sort of the same questions. And I said, one of the things that our kids have taken for granted, but that as a student of history and as a tour guide, we're living in an age of miracles. There have only been 3 times in history where we've been sovereign in the land of Israel. And the first was King David, and then the Hasmonean dynasty, and then since 1948. And it's something that that my children, I don't think ever maybe didn't think about so much until now, because it was such a part of them that they completely understood that. But it's a miracle. We're living in miraculous times, and I feel incredibly lucky that we're here. I really do, even after what happened to Arya.
I think your perspective is not only refreshing but really helpful and strengthens, I think, everyone who's listening. Debbie, is the decision of 2 of Arya's siblings to move to the OTEF, to the Gaza periphery, in any way impacted by what happened, or was this planned before?
No, I think it's a lot. Well, one of them, I think, yes, about what happened to our family. He's going to work in a mechina there. But my daughter, who's really, actually, I have a 21-year-old daughter who started even a year before October 7th, this group. She wanted to start a group of people that maybe ultimately would live together somewhere in the periphery. And when she went around to ask people who have done it before, they said, listen, don't start with that, because that's a very high and lofty goal. Start with weekends. And so she put together with some other friends a group that's now called Tikvatenu. And they started with weekends together, and it's religious and not religious. And the whole idea was, how do we have conversations? Because, as you know, before October 7th, it wasn't so easy in this country, and the judicial reform. But how do we get along? How do we listen? Anyway, this group they actually had a meeting at our house on the 6th. They were planning their next weekend, and then this happened. But they've continued. They recently had their, the first weekend since the 7th, and they did it actually in the desert with a theme, which is like sort of going back to the desert. How do we begin again? It was beautiful. And now they have from this group 15 that want to go live on a kibbutz, help rebuild, help with agriculture, help with education. And they're right now talking to people. So I'm inspired by them, to be honest.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Debbie, I think we're almost coming to a close, but I would like to ask your thoughts on this whole issue of the transition between, of course, Memorial Day and Independence Day, which, again, this year takes on not only a much deeper context, but also now your new position.
Right.
What your thoughts on that are? Is it something that you think we can even celebrate?
So the question to celebrate, we have to celebrate. We are, the fact that we are here, and, we are 76 years old, like, we have to be proud of that. How we celebrate has to be in every city, and I guess the government, they have to decide how. For me personally, I find that every time I have something which is in remembering Aryeh, the next day for me I feel very empty. It's hard. So I don't see that we will be doing, any huge celebrating. I think we'll be with friends, but as a country, we have to be proud of where we are. It's a very special country with amazing people, and that has to be celebrated, and those people have to be recognized. And I understand so many of them are lighting the torches, and I'm proud to be an Israeli. I don't have any regrets, and although I miss my son terribly, I know that he would not have chosen to do anything different that day. And so we're left with that.
I think a good place to end our conversation. I really do appreciate your time, and I know that everybody on the line does as well. And really, just wishing you and your family a long life, and of course, thanking you for your sacrifice. And may we see better days ahead this year and next.
Amen, amen.
Debbie Ziering, mother of Arya Ziering, thank you again, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.